Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast. This podcast is meant to bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality. Whether you are a current or aspiring short-term rental property manager, host, or real estate investor, you're in the right place. Dive in with us to uncover the captivating stories and golden nuggets from industry heavyweights, including leaders, operators, investors, syndicators, founders, and entrepreneurs. So thank you. Really, thank you for embarking on this journey with me. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast, and I promise I'll do my best to deliver value-packed episodes that hopefully will not just inform, but also help inspire the next generation of real estate and hospitality professionals. Truly yours, Sebastián Muñoz. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our very first episode of the Hospitality Edge podcast. If you're passionate about hospitality, vacation rentals, real estate, and entrepreneurship, then this show is for you. Today, I am delighted to have an exceptional guest who also happens to be a boss, friend, and mentor of mine. Born in Mexico and arriving in Canada over 2 decades ago for his MBA at McGill University, Eduardo has worn many hats on his journey as a serial entrepreneur, founding and scaling 7 businesses, and even successfully exiting some of those along the way. Amongst his remarkable entrepreneurial successes, Eduardo has founded USwap, the first online classifieds website of its kind that quickly became the largest classifieds website for students across Canada, and which Eduardo founded while still in school. TravelAlerts.ca, which went on to become Canada's leading publisher and newsletter of travel specials and was eventually sold to Tourstar Digital. Twango, Quebec's first and largest group buying website with over 1.2 million subscribers. Eduardo and his team basically grew this company from 0 to 40 plus million in sales in only a few years. And Eduardo eventually sold his interest in this company, but Twango is still a thriving organization nowadays. Zuit, a revolutionary cashback mobile application that helped more than 500,000 users save money when buying from their favorite brands by simply scanning their receipts. And finally, and the main topic of today's conversation, Angel Host, a vacation rental maximization solution that helps property managers around the world with their listings, pricing strategies, and guest communications, representing more than 1,000 properties across more than 7 countries. You might recognize Eduardo as a sought-after keynote speaker at universities and industry conferences worldwide, sharing his insight on innovation, sustainability, and overall entrepreneurship and everything vacation rental related. But there's much to this visionary leader than just his impressive business acumen. He's a devoted father of 2, a genuinely humble leader, and a generous mentor and educator. Without further ado, Eduardo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sebastian. Wow, that was a nicely crafted introduction. Thank you for that.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm genuinely excited for this one. I guess the first question that comes to mind is 7 businesses now. Angel Host being the last so far. What would you say is a recurring theme amongst all of those different companies you've started? Has it always been out of need, or is it also just the enjoyment that you get out of starting something and building something from scratch?
Well, from a young age, I've never been able to, stay still. I've always liked to do something, and I'm always and to this day, everywhere I go, anything I see a business opportunity, right? I always see, I could be doing this, or we could be doing, this idea or this other idea. It hasn't always been a matter of personal need. Often it has been the case, but in other cases, it's just been about me observing what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening in the industry, and identifying a need, or identifying another company who's fulfilling the need, but not in the way that I think it should have been done, or maybe not in the geography that some of the examples of my last company, one of my last companies, Twango, I did not invent the concept of group buying. It wasn't necessarily me that had a need for I wasn't specifically looking for discount coupons. It's just that I saw that some companies in Europe and the US had launched the concept and no one had done so in Canada. So I figured, wow, this could be a good opportunity here as well. So sometimes out of need, sometimes just out of observing things. And Angel Host, of course, came out of a personal need, that came for better property management and more. We'll talk a bit more about that, I'm sure. But yes, it depends. It depends. I think the underlying theme is always being on the lookout for opportunities. And and even now, I have to slow myself down. I was recently on vacation, and just discussing with my kids and observing things around. uh, I came I came with another couple of ideas. Came up with a couple of ideas of things that we could start. But I told myself, no, 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 we have to focus 100% of our energy into Angel Post, because of course that's one of the keys to doing things well, right? Focusing on one thing at a time, and that has worked well for me in the past.
Absolutely, and I want to get to the story of how Angel Host came about. But before that, along the way, you've learned things that have worked, other things that have not worked when starting this different companies. I want to touch on some of the things that you look for the ideal business to start. And you just described, just being on the lookout of the market, what's going on, what are some needs that might be coming up and whatnot. But another thing you always mention is a growing market. So tell us about why you identified, when it comes to Angel Host, for example, the fact that this could be such a tremendous opportunity, even if it's not, as you were saying previously with Twango, something completely new, but maybe taking something already existent and making it a little bit better. As long as it's in a growing market, you've always said that that's one of the things you look for.
Yeah, I think our approach at Angel Host was new at the time when we launched the company 5 years ago. It was a variation of things that already existed. But yes, definitely rule number one: launch any business in an industry, in an area that is growing, right? Because when things grow, as I always say, there's a growing market is a forgiving market, meaning if things are growing, you can sometimes make some mistakes. You might have to adjust along the way, but because the market is growing so much, it's a wave that is bringing you with it. I learned that lesson early on. My very first business was a printing business. I just thought one day that it would be a good idea to print business cards and to sell all sorts of printed materials. And we also sold paper. And I remember it was hard to get clients because everybody already had a supplier for business cards, right? It wasn't an up and coming market. There were thousands and thousands of companies already selling business cards, so that made it very difficult to compete and to stand out, because the only way to differentiate ourselves was based on offering a lower price, which would cut on our margins, or trying to offer a better service. But everybody would say the same thing: we offer a better service than our competitors, which is always hard to prove until you actually have the client, and you won't get the client unless you have a more convincing argument. I remember one of my very small business ventures when I was younger as well. One of my family members had a cheese factory, and I figured, oh, well, if he has a cheese factory, I could potentially sell cheese to different restaurants. And again, I found myself competing against hundreds of incumbents that already had not one or two, but multiple cheese suppliers. And it was very hard for me to break into that. So, by contrast, when we launched the Tuango, the group buying website selling coupons online, a bunch of things happened. First of all, we were the first ones in the market, which was amazing, right? It catches people's attention. We did some very good and creative marketing to get in front of everyone. It was a very novel product and something that people had probably heard of happening in the US and Europe and China. And it was the first time they would see that in Canada. And the need was incredible, right? So many people wanted to go pay less to go to a restaurant or a spa or an hotel or anything like that. So that's how we managed. I think in our first year we must have sold something like $800,000 in coupons, which was extremely impressive for just a few months old company. But right after that, I believe we jumped to something like $4 million, and then to or 5 million. I forgot the numbers, but the point is, after only 3.5 years, we were already selling more than $40 million a year in coupons, right? So again, was that because we were geniuses and we were like super smart people? Well, I'd like to think that we did things well, right? We recruited the right talent, we had a good plan, we focused on execution, but it also had a lot to do with the market that was growing, and we were, taking advantage of that opportunity out there. In fact, one of the reasons why we grew so fast is because we received investment to capture as large a portion of the market as we could, before other people came in, and dozens of competitors came into the market, not even a few years, but just within 6 to 9 months. But by then we were way ahead of the competition, and that allowed us to remain number one throughout the life of the company.
Growing market, definitely something to look for when starting a new business. Now, when it comes to angel hosts, it was actually something like you were mentioning earlier that you needed for yourself. So you had a condo in Playa and you were renting it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that story and how the concept of angel host came about?
Listen, when I sold, I think it was my fourth company, Travel Alerts. I was very very happy with that, and I had been vacationing with the family in Mexico for quite some time, and specifically in Playa del Carmen. So when I found myself, in this position, very lucky to have sold my company, I figured I would love to buy a property in the place where I love to go on vacation, and that's how I bought my property in Playa del Carmen. And I did what most people do, or almost everyone. You find a local property manager that can take care of your property, right? You're not going to be there, so you need someone to make sure that the cleaning is done and the maintenance is done, but also someone that can rent your property to third parties, right? So that you can generate some revenue. I always thought it would be smart to not leave the property empty, but even though I was going to use it quite often, I would still want to make sure that it was rented. Um, and it was through that process I contacted a local company, very professional, great company. Actually, we bought them later on. Actually, we bought them about a year and a half ago. But the point is, I quickly realized that while they were very good at providing the local services, it was very hard for them to keep up with all the changes with regards to how best to promote their properties on Airbnb and Booking.com and VRBO. It took them a while to be on all platforms. I remember talking with the owner and complaining about the fact that my rates were flat, um, or maybe by season, right? They were higher in high season, they were a bit lower in low season, but sometimes even during high season, I would see an empty week, and I would call them and say, "But why are we not lowering the price, right?" Or even though it's low season, why are we not increasing the price for the weekends, or maybe increasing them slightly more because it's a long weekend, or maybe offering a promotion and all sorts of things. Concepts that I had learned in previous work experiences, specifically about dynamic pricing and revenue management. So I quickly realized that it wasn't just something that the company that I was working with couldn't handle, couldn't do, but that every other property manager in the world didn't have, or had very limited technology and very limited time to implement these technologies and to make the most out of my property, right? And get more income out of it. And that's when I thought, well, if we put together a company that uses technology that is out there, just that I know just how complicated and how time consuming it is to go out there, research the different technologies. Once you find the right technology, to pay for it, to learn about it, to get someone in your company to do it for you. and then to maintain it. And not only that piece of technology, it turns out that in the world of vacation rentals, one technology doesn't do it all. You probably need at least 5 or 6 different technologies, which means that you need people to manage them, right? And sometimes you hire someone and then that person leaves the company and you lose that knowledge. So all of those things, I figured it would be ideal if there would be a company that would do all of this for me, have the right technology, the right team, not only the right technology in terms of what we buy, but the ones that we create ourselves, and bundle it all together and offer it as a service to the thousands of property management companies around the world. We can help them grow. We can help them operate in a much more efficient way, which in turn should result in more loyalty on the side of their owners. So with that theory, it was that, I approached my co-founder, Veronique, and she had a very similar problem with her property. So she was also very excited about the idea. And then we just went out there in the market and saw if there was a need on the owner's side, on the property manager's side for our service. And turns out that there was, right? And going back to the point of a growing market, um, maybe, well, it is a growing market in the sense that vacation rentals is a growing trend around the world. But it was also a massive existing market in the sense that there's a lot of potential, a massive potential market, right? In terms of thousands of property managers out there who require this type of services that we're offering. So that has allowed us, I think, again, through a careful execution, having an amazing team surrounding us, and focusing one thing at a time. And I think that's what has allowed us to be where we are today in terms of growth.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And it's been a tremendous ride along the way. Many properties that are now part of the portfolio, many countries. The team is quite large. Now, one question I have is, one thing is to start a company,
Mhm.
and another thing is to scale it and turn it into an actual organization. And a lot of people can start a company, right? And we talk with property managers all day long, and a lot of times what they're doing is they're starting this company, but at the end of the day what they're actually doing is they're getting a job for themselves, because basically everything depends on them.
Mhm.
Everything runs through them,
Mhm.
and if they're not around, the business cannot operate. And one
Mhm.
thing you've done tremendously well that I'd like you to touch on is building a company where, of course, at the very beginning you had to be involved in everything. And I remember you doing guest services during Christmas, and you were involved in absolutely every department of the company. But yet now, 5 years in, you're able to take a vacation, and the company still runs. So
Totally.
what's the difference in your opinion, Eduardo, between creating a business that just creates a job for you versus creating a company, an actual organization that can operate, run, and thrive with or without you?
It depends on, yeah, and I'll explain the difference. And it also depends, of course, on your objectives, right? Because there's nothing wrong with creating a business that will serve as self-employment, and will help you, pay your bills and take care of your family. And that's fantastic. And a lot of people have thrived building those type of businesses. But like you said, there are businesses that depend on themselves, right? It depends on them being there on a day in, day out basis. And if they leave, the business would most likely disappear, right? Because they probably delegate a few things, but the core of the business depends on this individual. Um, if the intent at the on the other hand is to truly build a long-standing company and a growing company, the mindset needs to change from day one, right? The mindset needs to change from I should do this because I know how to do it well, to let me find someone else who can do it. And it's not always easy, Sebastian, because when you start a company, and especially if you're short on cash, you're always faced with the situation where I know how to do this. And if I pay someone else to do it for me, there goes 30, 40, 50, $60,000 out of the door that I won't see, right? And I'm still not at the level or the size where I can still pay myself a salary. So I have to do this work. and you get caught in a vicious circle because you end up doing that work, but you don't have enough hours in the day to continue growing your business because you're stuck with the same group of clients that you have, just servicing them. So, whereas if you force yourself to hire someone, you are sacrificing short-term gains, that's for sure. And you're going to go through tough financial times, that's for sure, unless you get some outside investment. But that will allow you to scale in a much faster way, because then you start getting specialists for each area that actually might actually do the job even better than you do, right? So that's one thing, and it frees up your time to think about what to do in terms of growth. So that's the difference, that's and I've always been focused in my early businesses. I would do a lot of things myself, and as time has gone by, I find myself trying to quickly detach myself from day-to-day operation. I enjoy doing myself like sales. Of course, I was in charge of the first 10 or 15 contracts that the company signed. So that's good. It helps me be in touch with the clients, understand what they need. And then when I get someone else to do sales, I can explain to them what it is that clients are looking for. I can give them proper training. Like you mentioned, I also took care of a bit of guest services, not much, thankfully, because I'm not very good at guest services. But once we brought in someone, I knew what to look for in that person because I had done guest services myself. Revenue management. I mean, I had the concepts of revenue management. Of course, I'm no revenue management expert, but at least I knew what questions to ask to our revenue managers, the first ones we hired.
I've heard, one little quote that refers to the mindset that you should have, and it's basically the mindset needs to be around who rather than what. So, like you
Mhm.
were saying, the people that you need to put in place rather than what you need to do. Because even though you might be able to do it at first, you'll have to do it. But if you keep doing it just because you can do it, then as you were saying, it's a never ending cycle. And I think it's hard. I'm thinking again about the property management companies that might be listening to this, that might be currently stuck in that cycle. Of course, one option is, come talk to angel hosts, and without you having to take that difficult decision of, whether to hire more people or not, you can get all that infrastructure from a company like angel host. But otherwise it is tough to decide when to hire, and what should be the first hire. So what are some lessons when it comes to, what should be those first hires? When should you bring someone as a partner, as opposed to when should you bring someone as an employee? What do you consider to be some things that require, partnership role versus just bringing on some help?
Well, with regards to your first question, who do you bring in? Uh, what type of talent do you bring in first? I would say anything that is extremely time consuming, right? Anything that is taking too many hours of your day. So most of the times that's going to be, or at least in the world of vacation rentals, that would be the day-to-day operations, right? Maybe someone who's fielding the calls from all the guests inquiring about future reservations or the guests in house. That could be extremely time consuming, right? Especially because guests are expecting a very quick response. So you would be glued to your WhatsApp and to your phone trying to give answers to everyone. And next thing you know, you spend your day, you spend 3 4 5 hours of your day just on messages. And those are 3 4 5 hours that you could have spent talking with new owners and building your business. The same thing could happen with revenue management, right? For example, in our case, just to quote examples of the world that I live in right now, you could be monitoring rates and building Excel spreadsheets and pivot tables and analyzing, booking patterns and booking velocity and pacing reports all day. Which, if you enjoy numbers, I'm sure it's something that you would love to do, and I'm sure you would consider yourself very good at analyzing numbers. But next thing you know, you already spent 3 4 hours in front of your computer. It's lunchtime already, and again, it was time that you missed out on actually growing your business. So I think delegating all the things that that are very operational is important, and also to recognize what your own strengths are. Right? I think um, hopefully, as a business person, one of your strengths is going to be in building relationships, right? And selling and getting in touch with other people, and the clients trust you. So if the first group of clients trusted you to sign up with your company, chances are you're one of the best equipped to do sales. Doesn't mean that you only have to be the only one doing sales, but you're pretty well equipped to do sales. Now, the question about the partner is a very interesting one. And it's a question of personal choice and also about your own abilities. For me, um, at a very young age, in my early days, I needed a co-founder because I didn't have the the self belief in myself, right? I was fearful of going out and doing things just by myself. Back then, with my first businesses, selling things on the streets and or selling business cards or whatnot, I was very shy about calling a company and offering my services. I knew I wasn't. I had the idea, but it was going to be very hard for me to do it. So actually, the first person I invited to join my first company was my cousin, because he was extremely sociable. He had no problem talking to everybody. He had no problem if we were selling something and someone approached us. He had no problem approaching that person and answering all their questions. Where I just wanted to hide. I was way too shy for that. So that's why I needed a business partner.
Wow, I
Uh,
cannot imagine you being shy, Eduardo. It's hard to imagine.
I was extremely shy, extremely, extremely shy. Of course, you overcome those things with time and with experience. I think there's still a part of me that will always be a little bit shy, but you overcome those things. Um, um, or when I asked my brother to help me with the home delivery service that we had started, in that case, it was because it was a lot of workload. I just couldn't handle all the workload, and I needed to bring in someone that I could trust. But for example, when I moved to Canada, to Montreal specifically, and I wanted to launch a company, I knew I needed a business partner because I was new to this country. I had no idea about the rules, the regulations, the way of doing business. And most importantly, I didn't speak the local language, right? Uh, I speak French now, but back then I didn't understand the word. So I searched for a partner, that could complement and could bring to the company the things that I didn't know. And I guess in my case, I just got used to launching businesses with business partners, and I would never think of launching a business without one, because it's always fantastic to have someone to bounce ideas with, or to, you know, of course, the person brings in complementary skills to the table. To this day, you know very well, Veronique, my co-founder and business partner, right? And I think our skills don't necessarily overlap, but complement each other very well. And that, I think, has made a big difference in terms of the success of the company. So, bringing someone who you trust, bringing someone that you find that you have complementary skills, I think it's very important and can make a big difference. But it's not for everyone. If you are the type of individual that is very confident, that you are a leader, you can inspire people, you are good at a lot of things, then you actually don't necessarily need a business partner. I've also seen companies made the opposite mistake, bringing on board too many business partners, right? Let's say you're launching a technology company, and all of a sudden you decide that, yeah, my head programmer will be a partner, and the first person who gets services will be a partner, and everybody's a partner. Well, probably not the best approach, because everybody's going to be super diluted, and the decisions, who's going to make the final decision on things, right, when you have four equal business partners. So um, in my view, having two co-founders, that's what I personally have seen is the ideal. Some people have managed to make it work with three. I've never seen someone make it work with four or more. Like, usually what happens there is that a couple of one or two or three of the partners end up leaving the company very quickly. So
The one I've heard is the ideal trio, when especially when it's a tech company, of a hustler, a hipster, and a hacker. So the hustler is like, capital raising, sales, marketing. The
Mhm.
hipster should be like product oriented, design oriented, just process oriented, and then the hacker, of course, is the programmer, right? The technical person. But as you said, it's very dependent on the individual skills of each
Right.
entrepreneur,
Yeah, exactly.
and where they want to take the company. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's very insightful. Now, one thing that I really admire, Eduardo, when I observe you work and just go through meetings and go through challenges and all that stuff, is the way that you take decisions, because it seems to me that it's very analytical, and it seems to me like you always have a lot of clarity. Maybe that's just the impression you give, and maybe inside of your mind there's actually a lot of things going on. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you approach decision making in general, because it's such a thing that you have to be doing all the time. Getting data and then taking decisions, especially as the CEO of a company. So what's your general approach to decision making?
Yeah, I mean, I do hesitate sometimes with the decisions that I have to make, but overall, I think I try to be extremely analytical and factual and fact based, right? So uh, even if I made a decision that was taking in a certain direction because I believe that was the right thing to do at a certain point in time, if I see 2 3 months later that that approach is not working, I'm not going to romanticize about my previous idea or stay very stubborn because I don't want to recognize that I made a mistake. I try to be always very factual. So that's probably why you see that in me. Like once I have an idea based on the analysis that I did, I'm pretty much just going to go with that, because otherwise you never make decisions. And there's something called analysis paralysis, right? And sometimes you can end up just analyzing things. So there's many reasons why people end up making bad decisions. And I'm not saying that I don't make bad decisions, but I think that if I make a bad decision, I can try to quickly recognize that I did and then change courses, right? Change course for the company. Uh, Mistakes will happen all the time. But I like to be sure of my decisions, and I try to always base them on data and facts and a good analysis of things. And once I have that good analysis, I feel very confident, which I think also helps the company because if you see that the leader of the company is confident about the direction or the decisions that are being taken, it inspires more confidence, right? If you see the leader of the company always changing his mind or never sure, or never categorically saying we're going in this direction, then we're going in no direction, right?
That's super interesting, and that same confidence, I've seen from being inside of Angel Host. That same confidence plays out even during times of crisis. Like, I remember seeing that, in the middle of COVID, when there were all this things going on, cancellations and stress. What you were presenting, maybe what you were discussing internally with Veronique was you were stressed and whatnot, but at least what you were presenting to the company was a very confident decision of what had to be done, where we were at, very transparent. So what are some best practices that you would share with anyone out there, any leader out there of an organization, when it comes to dealing with times of crisis, so that the entire team stays aligned on the same objective, and fear doesn't prevent people from actually working towards a resolution?
I like transparency. I remember during COVID, and we got every single one of our reservations canceled, and our revenue, at least in March and April in 2020, it literally went down to zero, like maybe $300 of income or something like that. But it literally went down to zero. And I think I was just being very transparent with everybody and saying, okay, here's the situation. We don't know how long this is going to last. Of course, we wouldn't be able to continue paying everybody their full salary. So that's why I immediately told everyone, if anybody wants to start working half-time and continue working full-time, that's great, because we'll pay you with shares, or we'll just cut your salary by 50%. So let us know what you prefer. I was very transparent, onto what was happening, what was the situation, and addressing it and saying, if we can survive, but we just have to we have to take the steps. Um, we recently had, some other internal issues about, hacking, a small hacking episode that happened, that can happen to any company in the world. And the importance was to say, how can we address this quickly? I knew that I had an amazing team dealing with it. My role was mostly to reassure everybody that it will be okay. You caught it early. We're working on it. You guys are extremely capable. So even though I wasn't necessarily involved in the solving it, right, and all the hard work that they were doing, my role was mostly to say, don't worry, things will be okay. And what are the next steps that we need to take, and how do we prevent this from ever happening again? So transparency, I think, works, when conveying, peace of mind, and conveying, hopefully, leadership, to the rest of the company, that we're going in the right direction. We're doing the right things. And whenever we make a mistake, also recognizing, and you've seen me sometimes at monthly meetings saying, well, we tried this, but it didn't work, or we're having this type of issues, or we made this acquisition and these things didn't work out. So now we're learning for our next acquisition to do this or that. So at least in my case, I feel that at least helps me. It helps me being transparent. It helps me, but by being transparent, I also gather some very interesting feedback from everybody. So that's again, that's just for me. It doesn't mean that it will work for everybody.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and it's something that everyone appreciates. That transparency that happens, and that comes from the leadership. Now, I'd like to talk about your evolution of how you see growth in a company,
Mhm.
after having started so many companies yourself.
Mhm.
A lot of young people, young founders, and even you've told me about a series, We Crash, and I had a look at the series, and basically I think a mistake that a lot of young entrepreneurs make is just growing at all costs and just focusing on growth, and not caring about the rest, not caring about sustainability, not caring about operations, not caring about the well-being of the rest of the team. So what has been your evolution on how you see growth, and how has it gotten to where it is now, which seems from an external point of view to be, you know, a very sustainable type of growth that you aim for, where yes, we want to
Yeah.
grow, but not at all cost, and not if it means having people that are burned out and unsatisfied.
So listen, especially in the world of technology, it's all about growth, 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 right? In my experience, I've seen very few examples of companies that have just aimed for growth, have just burned money left and right, and have been able to just raise more, raise more, raise more, and eventually have a good outcome. And everybody talks about Amazon, 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 how they ran for like 20 years without making a profit, and now they're one of the largest companies in the world. Great, good for them. uh, but not everybody is Amazon, right? I learned my lesson early on in the year, it was back in 1998, and I launched my first internet company, uswap.com, the website for students to buy and sell used things online. And I was riding the wave of this new thing called the internet. And I had the first website for students to do such a thing. And we started getting tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of students across Canada using it. And I had investors backing me because they were like, wow, this is the .com thing, is the next big thing. Let's continue injecting funds. I was like so excited because I was getting money to hire people and to continue with our marketing. But we didn't have a strong underlying business model. We were growing in terms of users, and we figured, well, later on we'll figure out ways to make money from this, right? For now, what's important is to continue growing our user base. And what happened is that at some point we had the .com crash, I think it was April 2000, and my funding dried out, and I found myself with a company that, yes, had 1 million students using this platform, but we had very little revenue and very high costs. And eventually the company had to be dramatically scaled down and then merge with another one. So it wasn't a success story from that perspective. I mean, lots of learning, but definitely not a success story. So from that point onwards, every company that I started, I tried to make it in a way that it's okay if you lose a little bit of money, right? I make a very important distinction between gross margin, you know, gross profit before marketing expenses, and your bottom line. So the gross margin of a company is if you're delivering a service or a product and you subtract the cost of delivering that service, are you making money? Well, at that level, when you just subtract the cost of the people required to deliver the service, you have to be making money. In fact, your margins have to be at least 50, 60, 70%, right? At that level, right? Then you start subtracting all of your costs, your administration, your accountant, your office space, your phones, your legal expenses, all of those things, right? And that will give you the gross profit before the gross profit before marketing expenses. And at that level, I always try to always also make a profit, right? The only place where I allow myself to get into losses is once I subtract my marketing and sales expenses, because I know that my marketing and my sales expenses is what helps fuel the growth of the company. So you have to invest in client acquisition, and eventually those clients, you have a certain payback period, and that's what helps you get sales for the future. So I've always make a very clear distinction between those three lines. So gross margin always has to be positive, and I would say over 40, 50%, right? Profits before marketing expenses, you need to have at least something, even if it's a 2%, 3%, something that allows you to say to yourself and to the rest of the world, if I decided to stop growing today and I let go my sales and marketing team because I'm not looking to grow anymore, the company would be profitable, right? Now, if I lose 200,000, half a million, $1 million a year, because that's money that is going into marketing and adding more clients so that the next trimester, the next quarter, we're going to be much, much bigger, then that's money well spent, right? So that's my approach now to business. And it's much more sustainable in the sense that, as you know, Angel Host has been growing tremendously. And we talked openly about the fact that we're going to be going for another raise in the first quarter of 2024. And that's great. And that should allow us to continue scaling. But if the markets are bad, if there's no money available, if investors are concerned, all we have to do is scale down a little bit on the marketing expenses. And we would be at a point where we're like, okay, so we're not going to continue growing at the rate we were growing before, but we are a sustainable company. We can fund our own expenses, and we'll just continue to grow organically a little bit slower. So that for me is true value, right? Because then the company can sustain, not maybe not everything, right? A huge downturn in the economy and the perfect storm would be hard to survive, but nonetheless, we would be in a very strong position to do so. So that's been a very important business lesson for me, and one that I urge other entrepreneurs to look into. It's not an accounting concept that is taught widely at schools, right? Normally, you're taught about the gross margin, and then you're taught about EBITDA. Your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. But there's something in between called like the profits before marketing expenses, and that's something that I pay a very close attention to.
That's super, super interesting and very, very insightful as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about people and talent in general, because
Mhm.
you've hired and must have interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of people throughout your career. So what are some things you've learned along the way when it comes to what to look for and what to avoid, right? What are some red flags to avoid when it comes to recruitment and hiring in general, which is so crucial for the success of any organization?
For me, the number one thing that I look for, Sebastian, is the attitude and the fit within the team's culture. And having a fit within the team's culture has nothing to do with the way a person looks or what they think. They could have green hair and and they could come from all walks of life. It's not about that. Actually, diversity is something incredibly important and brings so much value to the company. It's about having the right attitude. You want people that are coming to the company and want to have a collaborative approach with everybody else. You want people that are nice, basically. I want people who are nice to each other. We just came back from our get together with a team in Latin America, and it's such a, it's so incredible to see everybody getting along with each other, everybody having fun, everybody being nice and polite with the other and helpful. And that's reflected in everything, right? And you see it in the day to day of the company, how that makes a huge difference. So I said more than once that sometimes I hire people within 5 seconds of meeting them, because within a few seconds I can tell, how their attitude, their smile, their energy, I can feel that they're good people. Of course, after that, I want to make sure that they have the right skills, right? Because they could be like all fun, but they might not be able to do the work. But the opposite, I try to never go the other way around, like hiring someone that knows very well how to do the job but are not a good fit for the team. They're arrogant, or they're not humble enough. I like to hire nice, humble, hardworking people, right? That will bring it sets the right example. And then when people start collaborating with each other, you start realizing, oh wow, I like this person that I collaborate with. Oh, I like this person that I collaborate with. We might have different opinions sometimes. We even might have some disagreements, right? And that's fine. But you feel that the other person, the other part of the team, and the other part of the company is also doing their best. I've seen just how negativity can be within a company. So I like to foster positivity. I really like to foster people, supporting each other. And how much of a difference does that make? I've known of many companies that have taken the opposite approach, right? And they have a take no prisoners approach and just performance, and they also do well. So I wouldn't say that it's a rule or a prerequisite to be successful. But for me, starting a company, it's not just about the money, and it's not just about, you know, growing and growing and growing. It's also about being happy, right? And enjoying what we're doing. For all I know, I might be dead next week, right? So if that happens, I'd rather take with me the feeling of having created something nice. I'd rather leave behind something that people have enjoyed working at than leaving behind something that produced extremely good EBITDA that made investors very rich but made a lot of people miserable. That to me just doesn't work, right? So I really do my best, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it by any means, but I really do my best to bring together a group of people that enjoy working with each other, that enjoy collaborating with each other, that bring the right attitude, and that at the end of the day they go back home and they say, I really enjoyed my day. Yeah, it could have been stressful. Stress is normal. Stress is not bad. It's normal. It makes us work, be more attentive. But that they go back and say, I've enjoyed this. And I think one of my biggest joys is when I meet people from previous companies that I've had, and we start talking about their experience at the company that I previously started, and they tell me, oh, that was my best work experience, and I enjoyed it so much. That for me is the ultimate, that's the ultimate compliment that someone can give me, right? Not that, oh, you sold the company or you produce so many millions. It's about how happy people are through their journey, right, in the company. So I think
It makes a
that's
huge difference, and I can tell you from the point of view of someone working there that it does make all the difference, and makes you more excited to tackle your work. So you and Veronique and the rest of the team, everyone's doing a tremendous job at keeping this company culture in place, and happiness is one of those company values, right? Happiness, excellence, and growth. So definitely super relevant. Now, I was listening to an interview of Brian Chesky, the CEO of I was going to say Angel Host of Airbnb, and he was saying how when COVID came about, he felt his responsibility more than he had ever felt it
Mhm.
when it comes to what it means to be a CEO. And also in parallel to that, I was reading a book called The Motive, a leadership fable, why so many leaders abdicate their most important responsibilities. And it talks about the difference between reward based leadership and responsibility based leadership, which basically just means when you're a reward based leader, and let's say you get to be a CEO, then you'll see that as a reward and a price, so to speak, for all the work you've done throughout your career. And so you'll enjoy the price. Basically, you'll do the things that you like to do, and you'll avoid everything that you don't enjoy doing, because now you can, right? You are the CEO, so you can pretty much do whatever you want. Versus a responsibility leader, or a responsibility oriented leader, is someone who does what needs to be done. And most of the times, at least what they say in the book, is when it comes to the CEO, it's making those decisions that no one else is willing to make, or having those difficult conversations with people within the team that no one wants to have and everyone is trying to avoid. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on having been a CEO so many times, being, let's call it at your prime in terms of leadership experience. What do you think are the most important contributions that a CEO should be focusing on, and what is it that you are trying to focus on personally when it comes to where you get involved in
Mhm.
Angel Host specifically?
Yeah, I do find myself getting involved in many things that I don't particularly enjoy, on things that, where we have difficulties or where things are not going as planned. And I have to take a deep dive, and I have to put my thinking hat, and I have to spend, countless hours doing analysis, speaking to different people, trying to, we talked earlier about making decisions and making informed decisions. So informing myself, uh, going through a lot of frustration sometimes when we don't have the data I need to make my decisions, or in the process uncovering some inefficiencies that I didn't know existed. So I by no means I find myself as a CEO of the company just doing the things that I like. More often than not, I find myself doing the things where things didn't work out well. Then I need to take a deep dive. I need to figure out: do we need to bring someone else on board? Do we need to hire an outside firm to help us with this? Do we what exactly do we need to do? So that's one of the things that I spend a lot of time as a CEO, identifying areas where things didn't work as planned, and helping out to fix those. I also try to spend time always having a look at the big picture. So I'm very lucky to have a tremendous team that deals with the day-to-day operations, and that's what allows me to focus on the big picture. And also I have brought in people that can help me thinking of that big picture and where the company should be going. And um, and I think those are my two biggest responsibilities, right? Like figuring out what comes next and being prepared for that, whether it's raising money, whether it's hiring people in the right countries, whether it's setting up an infrastructure in a certain way, or more often than not, fixing things that need to be fixed, right? And involving myself and rolling up my sleeves, and getting down to work on different areas. If we have an area that is a bit, has issues, I very often go very deep into that area, try to understand their processes, try to identify areas of opportunity. Um, so, so no, by no means, I at least I don't consider myself the type of CEO that just sits back, relax, and enjoys the view. Uh,
No, you are the example of a responsibility oriented CEO, and when it comes to rolling your sleeves, yeah, go ahead.
there, of course, is to not get extremely involved, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be seen like a micromanager. Micromanaging is something that I actually did in my previous company, because I always felt that I knew better, or how to tweak that communication, or how to tweak that presentation, or how to tweak this or that to make it better. And I have now learned that there's a fine balance. It's important for me. I have a certain vision. There's things I like them done a certain way, so I should bring that up. I should say, no, I don't like it this way. I would prefer for it to be this way, but not to go too much into the details or start doing the work that someone else should be doing, right? Just to put my stamp or my style into how things should be done, but then let the team that that I hire, let the rest do the rest of the work, and that will also make people feel valued and their contribution valued as well, because you're telling them how you would like to see things done, but the how it's done, or sometimes exactly how it's executed, you leave it up to them to take care of.
And it is super empowering when you give that kind of responsibility to your team, makes them feel ownership of whatever they might be working on. So that's super interesting. Now, when you're dealing with all the challenges and difficulties that happen in business,
Mhm.
anyone that might be working, let's say at Angel Host, they're looking up to you and Veronique for guidance, for advice, for confidence that things are right. But when you guys look upwards, I mean, there's no one to look for, right? So where do you personally find clarity and calm and drive whenever it's tough, whenever it's difficult, whenever you encounter the many challenges? What helps you recenter, or what is that thing that keeps you going when anyone else would stop?
Well, personally, I never feel alone in the sense that, first of all, I can always consult things with my business partner, with Veronique, like you mentioned, but I can also consult things with people within the company. I can call you up, Sebastian, and say, "Hey, Sebastian, how do you feel the market is? What should we do differently, or what is your take on this or that?" Or I can call Iman, who's helping us with mergers and acquisitions, and I could, run some ideas by him. And we also have the board of directors that we meet with every quarter, and that I know that I can call up. And sometimes I have questions that I know that they are the right people to answer. So, and they're also a very smart group of people. So it's that you can always find support around you, in a company. I think you just have to be sometimes humble enough to ask others, right, and not pretend that you know everything. And I think at this point in my career, I think I've learned that if there's one thing I know, is that I don't know everything, and I actually know very little. So I do rely on discussing with others, getting other people's opinion, right? And I find myself doing that all the time. Sometimes calling our HR manager and asking her, "Hey, we have this situation. How do you think we should we should deal with this?" Right? And our HR person, she's, I think, 24, 25 years old. That doesn't mean that she doesn't know many things that I don't know, or she did not bring ideas that I don't have. So yeah, I always look inwards into the company for advice, and also outwards, with our investors or other colleagues.
And that might work when you're looking for an answer or an idea or like some level of clarity. But what about when it comes to just the internal drive to keep going when it's just tough? And I don't know, it's a question. Like, do you ever wake up in the morning and are like, oh my God, we're facing so many challenges. Why am I even putting myself through this? What is the thing that currently keeps you going, keeps you driven when it's tough?
That's a tough one to answer. I mean, I just feel this fire inside of me. I want to do something, right? I wake up and the last thing I want to do is not do anything. And I really want to do things. It helps to stay motivated. The fact that when the company's growing, right? When, even though you have issues, you can see that the underlying metrics are still pointing in the right direction, right? Um, it's important to distinguish between temporary problems in the company and fundamental problems, right? So when the problems are temporary, and then you know that they can be fixed, it might take 2 or 3 months, or it might set you back in terms of your growth, but you know that they're solvable, right? Versus fundamental problems, when you know that maybe there's not a need for your service in the market, or the competition became so strong that it's impossible to overcome that competition. Those are things that can really hinder your motivation because you don't see the light out of the tunnel, right? So you just feel that you're in a dark tunnel, and it's hard to stay motivated when you don't see that light. So that's why I always try to keep a close eye on our overall growth, where we're going, the fundamentals of the business. I'm still very excited about the. I was just speaking with our in our off off-site retreat that we had last week in Mexico, and I was telling the team about the huge potential that the company has for the years to come. And that keeps me excited. So of course we have issues like any other company that we need to solve, but we're working on solving those, and the fundamentals of the company remain very strong. The fundamentals of how much we can grow, our bottom line, that remains strong. So I stay motivated because I see the potential, right? I think that makes a big difference. Um, on a personal basis, I have even remained optimistic, even in the face of adversity, because, well, I consider myself optimistic in the first place, right? But I always think, well, if everything goes wrong, and in the past it has happened to me, and say, well, if this business doesn't work, there's something else that can be done. I've always had that mentality, and that's what has allowed me to maybe close a company that wasn't working well, but then just be excited about the next one, right before Angel Hope, Sweet, which was an online couponing. It was a very smart app for people to get discounts from purchases in the supermarket. We got a ton of people to use it, but it never turned a profit. So it was very painful to have to close it. It was just, there was no way forward for a number of reasons. But I remained optimistic in the sense of saying, well, I don't have to invest time in this anymore. And now I can invest time in the next big idea, which happened to be Angel Host, and look where we are today, right?
That's awesome. No, and I love what you said about temporary versus fundamental problems, making the distinction so you can have peace of mind, even though you might have many temporary problems, but the fundamentals are still right. That makes a lot of sense. And just to wrap things up, Eduardo, because 1 hour has passed and I could keep you here for many more hours because I really enjoyed this, but we need to wrap it up. What can people expect when it comes to the future of Angel Host? Well, what does the future of Angel Host look like in the next 12, 18 months? What does that vision currently look like?
I think the fundamentals of our business haven't changed, in the sense that we continue to see around the world property management companies that are really good companies, but that are really struggling with growth. They're struggling with their day-to-day operations, and I think we can bring a huge level of operational efficiencies to them, and more sales, and a better way to continue growing as a company. So I'm very optimistic of what we are offering. Um, I see geographical expansion, right? Today we're very strong in the U.S. and we're very strong in Mexico, but I do see us growing in Europe and other parts of the world. Um, it's still a very exciting business. There's so many more things to do. It's a very rapidly changing environment that makes it a little bit challenging. The regulation from one day to the next. You have a good business in a certain city or a certain country, and then regulations change, and you lose that part of the business. So there's a lot of uncertainty around the world of short-term rentals. Not everywhere, but in some parts of the world. So, but then again, I think that makes us even more relevant, because instead of property management companies having to buy their technology and train on the technology and hire people, they can just outsource this component to us and focus on the core of the business, which is growth, without having to deal with all that uncertainty, right? And having to make big investments only to realize later on that they have to scale down their business or something. So I really think that we have a very bright future ahead of us. We just have to continue working hard, to continue being humble in terms of, not feeling that we know it all, keeping a very close, an open ear for what our clients have to say, what do they need, right? And just continuing thriving for excellence, trying to do the work the best possible way, in the most, in a very honest way, in a very transparent way. And I think that ultimately will pay off, right? It has paid off so far after 5 years. And I think the next 5 years will be very, very exciting for us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Eduardo. Anyone that's interested can follow you. We'll make sure to put your TikTok handle. They can follow you on LinkedIn. By the way, he's putting some very interesting content on TikTok. Just walking us through the fundraising process. So definitely check it out. And Eduardo, once again, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and I look forward to keep working by your side and keep seeing Angel Host grow and thrive.
Absolutely, Sebastian. This was very enjoyable. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your questions. It was a pleasure.